So I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, the value-added model. And when I thought that the way I would do it, I thought that I would show the evolution of a theory or an evolution of models. That's why I say from Taylor to TEDS. The T in TED stands for Taylor, but there's E, D, and S, and we'll do that. Okay. This is Bob Taylor, Robert S. Taylor. Bob is somebody we should know, or you should know anyway, besides being one of my mentors. He is the former dean of Syracuse University's Information School, School of Information Studies. And in fact, in 1974, I think, Bob changed the name from library science to information studies. 1972. And he was really the first. And Bob came out of counterintelligence in World War II. In fact, he's kind of like a Sergeant York type. Bob once, behind enemy lines in Germany, had something like 3,000 German soldiers surrender to him and another guy. There were 2 Americans and 3,000. And you know, first of all, they weren't supposed to be there for that purpose. But secondly, so he had them pile their arms up and told them to go down the road to the next checkpoint that they saw, and that's where they went. He went on about his business. He's a really interesting guy, actually. He's gone now. Bob died last year, into his 90s. And the value-added model was his final piece of major work that he did in '86. And I'll try to show the context, the chronological context. So we're going to talk about a few things. I'm going to set the scene quickly. I'll talk about Taylor's '86 model, Eisenberg and Dirks, myself and Lee Dirks from Microsoft, who also teaches for us from time to time. We did a major revision in 2008, and then TEDS came along in 2010. That's now the S stands for Scholl, Professor Jochen Scholl, who's on sabbatical and will be back at the end of next month. So, and then Scholl and Tim Carlson have done a number of activities applying Taylor to different situations. And then we'll have time for questions. And I prefer, if you have a clarification question, that's fine, but any major questions, let's wait till the end so that I can get through it all and not lose my place as an old guy. Okay. Anyway, this is going to set the scene now. We're setting the scene. Technology is the answer, of course. Now, what was the question, right? And there's a lot of people saying technology is the answer, and what the TEDS model, what value-added is all about, is all about the question, right? And the question is, how can we best meet the information needs of people? Right? I mean, that's what we're all about in our field and everything. How can we best meet needs? And the common binding thing, what makes us unique in the iSchool, what makes us unique in the information field, and some of you have heard me say this before, is that we look at the world differently than the rest of the world. We look at the world through information glasses. That's at our core. So we look to help meet people's needs through information, where my wife, who is a nurse practitioner, looks to meet people's needs through medicine and diagnosis. And people look at the world differently. So, but we're all about information, and what's kind of interesting is that information is the baseline of all endeavor, and particularly in our century, the 21st, maybe late 20th century, information explosion, information ubiquity is the norm. So when we talk about, meeting people's needs, my answer, I teach my students, my undergrads, that there's a few answers to all questions. And one of the answers is it all depends, right? So it all depends, and then if you're a consultant, you tell them how much money it's going to cost you to tell them what it depends on, right? But it really does depend, and the answer is, okay, it all depends, but what does it depend on? You know, what is it really supposed to do and depend on? And it depends, Taylor would say that we meet the information needs of people, the users, by adding value through various system processes. So Taylor would say it depends on, first and foremost, on users, and that's the term he used. It depends upon the user, right? And the way we fulfill that is by adding value. And the way that we add value is through certain processes with systems. Now, we're going to get into the details of these before, but that's what Taylor said. And what's really unique about it is Taylor did this in the early 1980s, which is well before most of the technologies that we think about today. So again, that's Bob Taylor. The book that he wrote was 1986, was Value-Added Processes in Information Systems. He developed most of his ideas a few years before that. And so, again, think about that time frame as the early 1980s. And so, how can we add value to better meet users' needs? That's what Taylor would say. And I like to tell my students, we want to do that. If you want to make $1 billion? Anybody want to make $1 billion? Anybody? If I had a check and write it, yeah. Right. If you want to make $1 billion, figure out what people need and how you can best meet their needs through information. I mean, that's what Bill Gates did, right? That's what Steve Jobs does all the time, right? That's what Zuckerberg did at Facebook and whatever. They just kind of figure out what people need and then they give it to them. Or if you want to change the world, it's the same thing, right? You want to feed the hungry? I don't think it's a food problem. It's an information problem, right? Or to cure disease or other things like that. So, you know, either way you want to go. All right. Underlying what Taylor has to say is, first of all, information is everywhere. Information is ubiquitous. There's this hierarchy of information called the information spectrum, and we'll talk about that. And moving up it is related to the value. And then Taylor defines, if you're in class and a faculty member says, you know, what's the definition of an information system? And we can talk about all kinds of systems, right? That video is a system, right? My computer and this is a system. The library over there is a system, and there are a lot of systems within the library. The online catalog, right? Google is a system. The web itself is a system. But Taylor would say the easiest way to define a system is by looking at the purpose. And the purpose of an information system is to add value to better meet user needs. Therefore, the definition of a system is that which adds value to meet people's needs. So almost any entity or thing that adds value. And we're constantly involved in this, Bob would say. And that. Now, this is the information spectrum. You all should have seen this 100 times, right? Data, information, knowledge, and action. And that's the way Taylor put it. And the part of the job of our information systems is to move up the continuum, move up the spectrum so that we make better decisions. So we make not data-based decisions or actions, that we make, in fact, information if not knowledge. And there's a wise guy in the back of the room, Scott Barker, who is teaching with me this quarter in Info 200. And I've presented this for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And Scott's sitting there, and after class he goes, you know, Mike, that's all well and good, but it's not right, really. Because as you're saying, action is really not the top. People, rightly or wrongly, make decisions based, they take actions based on data, or nothing, or on information, or knowledge. And what we're interested in is having decisions, more decisions be truly knowledge-based decisions, rather than information or data. And so I have to change this, because he's actually right. All right, so there it is. Here's the new spectrum. Right? First of all, I can take off the wisdom part for a minute. It's data, information, knowledge, and the action is on the outside of it. So that's something for us to think about too. We're adding value so we make better decisions. Better decisions, I mean, I think we fundamentally believe a knowledge-based decision is better than just a data-based decision. Now, wisdom up here, you know, is on the top of mountains and gurus and all that stuff or whatever. But in a way, wisdom is also what we aspire to. That we have wisdom and make wise decisions. So again, the purpose of an information system is to meet user needs. The system does so by adding value, and therefore Taylor's definition is a system of an information system is an entity, a thing, a system, a process which adds value to information to better meet user needs. Okay? So that's the baseline. That's where we are.